Okay, $12.25 billion. That is a truly massive number, and it represents Netflix's staggering revenue for just the first quarter of 2026 alone. Right out of the gate, we are looking at a 16% year-over-year growth. For a company of this immense size, adding that kind of incremental revenue is just an absolutely jaw-dropping achievement.
But that actually brings up a huge question for us. In a completely saturated market, how does a streaming giant keep growing? I mean, today, their competitive set isn't just other streaming platforms anymore, right? It includes Alphabet, Amazon, Apple, Meta, and TikTok. With so many massive options fighting for our screen time, how on earth did Netflix pull off these unbelievable financial numbers?
Well, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to reverse engineer Netflix's Q1 2026 success. And to do this, we aren't just reading through their Q1 shareholder letter. We're actually pairing it with a fascinating academic psychology paper by Yu-Ting Wen from the University of Toronto. This was published in Side Press, and it deeply studies the consumer behavior and brand loyalty behind Netflix's strategies. So basically, we're going to decode a cold, hard corporate earnings report using academic psychology. Let's dive right into this.
Here's our roadmap for today. 1. A record-breaking quarter. 2. The psychology of personalization. 3. Building loyalty through socials. 4. Local content, global reach. And finally, number 5, the future of entertainment.
Okay, part 1, a record-breaking quarter.
If we look directly at the actual financial data from their consolidated statements, you'll see their operating income hit nearly $4 billion. That's an 18% jump year over year, and it actually beat their own internal guidance. They achieved an operating margin of 32.3%, which is up from 31.7% the year prior. On top of that, their diluted earnings per share shot up 86% to $1.23. They are driving all of this through steady membership growth, higher pricing, and a rapidly expanding ad revenue base.
But to really understand how they got here, we have to look at their evolution. Remember the days of physical DVD rentals? Well, shifts in consumer behavior forced Netflix away from that traditional broad targeting model and into this highly data-oriented model of personalization and original content. And our academic source notes that this fundamental shift wasn't just a tech upgrade. It was a profound psychological adaptation to what we, the consumers, actually wanted from our entertainment.
Which brings us to part 2, the psychology of personalization.
So, here's where the psychology really kicks in. There's this key concept called the Technology Acceptance Model, or TAM. Basically, it's a psychological framework that explains exactly how and why users adopt a new technology. It boils down to two main things: perceived ease of use and perceived usefulness. According to the research, young consumers in particular are super drawn to Netflix, and more importantly, they stay subscribed because the platform scores incredibly high on these exact psychological triggers.
What does TAM look like in action? Well, it means algorithms and adaptive streaming. You know how Netflix uses AI not just to suggest what you should watch next, but to actually optimize your video quality based on whatever bandwidth you have available at that exact moment? If you have a poor connection, the video adapts instantly. That is the literal definition of ease of use. By constantly satisfying our need for a seamless, frustration-free experience, they create a psychological dependency that locks in viewership, even in a crazy competitive market.
Moving on to part 3, building loyalty through socials.
Our academic source highlights a strategy called social media marketing activations, or SMMA for short. Netflix uses what researchers call firm-generated content on platforms like Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. And notice, they aren't just posting boring corporate press releases. They are posting entertaining, fashionable, highly engaging content that gets people talking. They are meticulously engineering electronic word of mouth, or EWOM. And that's exactly what the academic research points out here. By interacting directly with influencers and fostering this electronic word of mouth, Netflix builds vibrant, dedicated communities. When fans see these short-term campaigns leaning into trending topics, it generates genuine hype. It makes the brand feel relevant, like they're in on the joke. That interaction builds serious trust. And in consumer psychology, brand trust leads directly to brand loyalty. They aren't just selling you a streaming subscription, right? They're inviting you into a cultural conversation.
Let's look at part 4, local content, global reach.
Just take a look at some of these incredible localization successes from the Q1 report. Netflix aired the World Baseball Classic exclusively for its members in Japan. The result? 31.4 million viewers, which sparked their largest single day of signups in Japan ever.
Because of that, Japan was actually their largest contributor to member growth in Q1. Meanwhile, Bridgerton Season 4 hit 94 million views globally, inspiring fan events in over 20 cities. They even had fans doing real-life marriage proposals at masquerade balls. The academic paper totally confirms this. Licensing and developing culturally relevant content is absolutely essential to overcoming local competitors.
But they don't just localize their content, they also localize their pricing. Look at the power of their dynamic pricing strategy here. In countries where they offer the ads plan, which is priced at $8.99 in the US, it accounted for over 60% of all Q1 signups. The research notes that flexible pricing structures are critical for adapting to different global markets. It lowers the barrier to entry so they can match the price to what different consumer segments are actually willing to pay.
And they aren't doing all of this alone. They lean heavily on creative, hyper-local partnerships. For instance, in Mexico and Brazil, they partnered with Mercado Libre, bundling Netflix directly into their e-commerce loyalty program. Our academic source points out that partnering with local internet service providers and regional players like this allows Netflix to deepen its market penetration. It's a brilliant way to bypass regulatory hurdles and cultural barriers, making Netflix the default choice by embedding it right into the local infrastructure.
Which brings us to our final section, the future of entertainment. So, Netflix wants to win more of what they call our moments of truth, and man, they are expanding rapidly to make sure they do. They recently acquired Interpositive, that's a filmmaking tech company founded by Ben Affleck to provide creators with generative AI tools. They launched Netflix Playground, which is a standalone kids gaming app, and they noted that about 10% of kids' profiles have already played games. They're expanding into video podcasts with major talent like Brian Williams. And they are pushing incredibly hard into live events, gearing up for the massive heavyweight boxing fight between Tyson Fury and Anthony Joshua. Literally, they are fighting for every single second of your entertainment time.
But of course, ambitious plans require serious cash. Let's ground all these future plans in financial reality. Their free cash flow rose to a stunning $5.1 billion in Q1. Now, full disclosure, a big chunk of this was boosted by a massive $2.8 billion cash receipt from a termination fee related to a Warner Bros. Transaction. I mean, not a bad little windfall to add to the war chest, right? Because of this massive influx, they even raised their full-year free cash flow projection to $12.5 billion. They have the capital fully stocked to fund all of these new tech and content initiatives.
As we start to wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a quote from Netflix co-founder and departing chairman Reed Hastings. He recently said, "My real contribution at Netflix wasn't a single decision. It was a focus on member joy. Building a company that could be both beloved by members and wildly successful." Honestly, it's the perfect synthesis of our two sources today. All the AI, the adaptive algorithms, the dynamic pricing, and the billion-dollar content budgets, it all ultimately serves one core psychological goal: creating joy for the user so they never, ever want to cancel.
And that leaves us with one final, provocative thought to ponder today. Netflix has been studying our viewing habits, refining their algorithms, and building their local partnerships for nearly 2 decades now. They've built an entire ecosystem rooted deeply in consumer psychology, and it's backed by unbelievable cash flow. With a massive algorithmic head start like that, can competitors ever truly catch up?